Saturday, 14th of June, 2025. Grand Riviera Ballroom. 8:06 p.m. The ballroom was a cathedral of money. 16 crystal chandeliers dripped light like liquid diamonds. White roses the size of fists spilled from silver urns on every table. The string quartet had just begun the third reprise of Pachelbel's canon because the bride, Vanessa, had declared it her song. 200 guests in black tie and couture laughed too loudly, drank too quickly, and pretended that second weddings were not haunted by the ghosts of first ones. I sat at table 5, spine straight in a midnight blue silk gown that cost more than most people's monthly rent. 72 years old, silver hair swept into a low chignon, pearls that had belonged to my mother heavy against my collarbones. To the world, I was Eleanor Rosewood, philanthropist, widow of shipping magnate Henry Rosewood, chair emeritus of half the boards in the city. To the small boy beside me, I was simply Grammy. Timmy, was 8, small for his age, dark hair sticking up no matter how many times I tried to flatten it with spit and prayer. He wore a miniature tuxedo with a clip-on bow tie that kept sliding sideways. In his left hand, he held a silver Matchbox Bentley. In his right, a half-eaten chocolate truffle he had been nursing for 20 minutes, because he was afraid the next course might contain mushrooms. He hated mushrooms the way other children hated monsters. He had his mother's eyes, Sarah's eyes, my daughter-in-law, who had died 4 years ago, when a drunk driver crossed the median on the Pacific Coast Highway. Those hazel eyes were the only part of her that still walked the earth. I watched him push the toy car in slow, deliberate circles across the damask tablecloth, making the softest vroom vroom under his breath. The sound was almost lost beneath the adult noise. The clink of crystal, the forced laughter of cousins who hadn't spoken in years, the bride's mother telling anyone who would listen how much the dress had cost. I reached over and straightened Timmy's bow tie for the 7th time. He let me. Children know when love is disguised as fussing. Then, without warning, his entire body went rigid. The toy car stopped mid-room. His free hand shot across the table and clamped around my wrist with a strength that belonged to nightmares, not 8-year-olds. His fingers were ice. "Grammy," he whispered, voice barely louder than the candle flames. "I want to leave. Right now. Please." Every maternal alarm bell I possessed went off at once. "Sweetheart, what is it?" I bent so my ear was level with his lips. The scent of his hair, Johnson's baby shampoo, and wedding cake sugar filled my nose. "You didn't look under the table, did you?" The ballroom noise receded to a dull roar inside my skull. I had learned long ago never to dismiss a child's terror. Children see with eyes that haven't yet been taught to lie to themselves. Slowly enough that the elderly couple on my left only smiled indulgently, I lifted the heavy floor-length tablecloth. The world beneath was a private cave, 4 carved mahogany chair legs, the leopard print carpet, Timmy's brand new patent leather shoes swinging 6 inches above the floor. And there, half hidden beneath his chair, a small square of thick cream card, folded twice. Expensive. The kind of stationery that costs more per sheet than a decent bottle of wine. My heart performed the same sickening lurch it had the night the highway patrol called about Sarah. I reached down. The paper was still warm from someone's pocket. I unfolded it beneath the flickering tea light. Table 5, child's glass. Clear liquid, 3rd from left. Cyanide. You took everything from me, Eleanor. Tonight I take something from you. No signature. Only a tiny embossed silver platter in the bottom right corner. I knew that mark. I had seen it on invoices, menus, and the breast pocket of a white chef's jacket 26 years ago. The night a 19-year-old girl collapsed in a hotel kitchen, and the world I thought I controlled cracked straight down the middle. I folded the note again, slipped it into my clutch next to my mother's pearls, and stood so smoothly that the woman across the table only smiled and said, "Children and their bathroom emergencies." I took Timmy's hand. His palm was slick with sweat. "Excuse us, darling," I murmured loudly enough for the table. Grammy needs the powder room. We walked out of the ballroom as if we were simply going for ice cream. I did not look back. I did not need to. I could feel the weight of 200 eyes that did not yet know they had attended the last happy moment of their evening. In the marble foyer, I texted Charles, my driver of 33 years. Side entrance. Now. Do not speak to anyone. 30 seconds later, the black Bentley purred to a stop beneath the porte cochere. I buckled Timmy into the back seat, kissed the top of his head, and said the words every child wants to hear when the world tilts sideways. We're going on an adventure, sweetheart. Close your eyes. He obeyed instantly. Children can smell safety the way dogs smell fear. I locked the doors, pulled away from the hotel, and did not breathe until the wrought iron gates of Rosewood Estate closed behind us with their familiar, dignified clang. Only then, in the silence of my own kitchen under bright halogen lights, did I take the note out again and read it for the second time. The paper still carried the faint scent of vanilla beans and burnt sugar, the ghost of a dessert kitchen that should have stayed buried. Marcel Laurent was supposed to be 75 years old, broken, and living on a pension in the countryside. Instead, he had walked into my son's wedding and tried to murder my grandson, and I knew exactly why. August 14th, 1999. The Palace Hotel, Grand Ballroom, 11:47 p.m. The air conditioning had been fighting a losing battle all evening. The room smelled of women's perfume, men's cologne, roasted duck fat, and the particular metallic panic that arrives when a charity gala discovers it is about to become a tragedy. I was 49 then, still wearing grief for my own mother like a second skin, but I had learned to hide it behind power suits and a voice that could freeze champagne. Chair of the City Food Safety Board. The woman you called when you wanted a restaurant shut down before the health inspector even finished his coffee. Tonight I wore emerald silk and the satisfied expression of someone who had raised $280,000 for the Children's Hospital in 4 hours. The string quartet had just finished Moon River. People were swaying on the dance floor, drunk on generosity and Dom Perignon. At 11:47 p.m., the double doors to the service corridor burst open, and a young sous chef stumbled out, face the color of spoiled milk. Help! Someone help! She's dying. The music died mid-note. I was already moving. High heels be damned. I pushed through the crowd like a shark through minnows. The kitchen was chaos. Stainless steel, steam, shouted French, the smell of burnt sugar and terror. On the floor behind the dessert station lay Camille Laurent, 19 years old. Strawberry blonde hair escaping her chef's cap, freckles across her nose like cinnamon, apron smeared with chocolate ganache, and something darker, vomit. Her lips were blue, her eyes rolled back to whites. A terrifying rattle came from her throat. Botulism, someone gasped. I dropped to my knees beside her. Airway? Clear, but she's paralyzed from the neck down. Call 911. Tell them suspected Clostridium botulinum. Prepare antitoxin. Marcel Laurent appeared as if conjured by the mention of his name. Tall, immaculate white jacket. Mustache waxed into perfect curls. He looked like a man watching his own heart being ripped out. Camille, ma petite? Non, non, non. He tried to cradle her. I shoved him back. Give them space. Paramedics arrived in 7 minutes that felt like 70. They loaded her onto a stretcher. Marcel followed, sobbing in guttural French, clutching her limp hand. The last thing I saw before the doors swung shut was Camille's eyes. Summer sky blue, fixed on the ceiling, already somewhere far away. 3 days later, she was declared brain dead. The culprit, improperly canned black truffles in the risotto course. Temperature logs falsified. Seals compromised. Supplier bribed. 3 other guests hospitalized. 1 elderly woman lost the use of her legs. I led the investigation myself. I was relentless. I wanted justice the way drowning people want air. Within 6 weeks, Laurent Luxury Events was finished. Licenses revoked. Bank accounts frozen. The restaurant on Ocean Avenue shuttered overnight. Marcel stood in my office on the 15th floor of City Hall, hat literally in his hands. and begged, "Eleanor, please. She was my only child. My wife died giving birth to her. If you destroy the business, you destroy the only thing I have left to keep her memory alive." I looked him straight in the eye and delivered the line that would haunt me for the rest of my life. "The law is the law, Mr. Laurent. Children deserve to be safe in restaurants. Your daughter paid the ultimate price for your negligence." He aged 10 years in 10 seconds. His shoulders folded inward like a paper house in rain. 2 weeks later, he tried to hang himself from the meat hook in his walk-in refrigerator. The rope snapped. He lived. Camille was moved to long-term care at St. Agnes and pronounced legally dead. The newspapers called it justice. I called it duty. I never once visited the hospital room where machines breathed for a 19-year-old girl who used to laugh like wind chimes. I never once asked myself whether the supplier's bribe had been larger than anyone admitted, whether the hospital's biggest donor had quietly asked me to make the caterer take the full blame, so the gala itself would not be tainted. I buried the question the way I buried everything else, deep and with a headstone of silence. 26 years passed, until tonight, when a silver platter watermark and the smell of burnt sugar crawled out of that grave and slid a note under my grandson's chair. I stood in my kitchen at 1:14 a.m., June 2025, holding that cream card between fingers that suddenly felt 72 years old and trembling. Marcel Laurent had not died of a broken heart after all. He had simply waited, and tonight he had come to collect. Rosewood Estate, 1:47 a.m., 15 June 2025. The grandfather clock in the entrance hall struck 2 slow, mournful notes as I carried Timmy upstairs. He had fallen asleep in the Bentley, thumb in mouth the way he hadn't done since he was 4. His tuxedo jacket was crumpled. The bow tie hung like a dead butterfly. I laid him on the guest room bed that used to be Sarah's when she first came home as a bride, pulled off his tiny patent shoes, and covered him with the same quilt my own mother had sewn during the war. Faded roses on cream cotton, every stitch a prayer. He stirred, murmured something that sounded like "mommy," and burrowed deeper. I stood there longer than I should have, watching the rise and fall of his narrow back, feeling the old familiar terror that every grandmother knows, the terror that the world is too sharp for the children we love. When I finally closed the door, I left it open exactly 3 inches, the way Sarah always insisted, so the hallway light could reach him. Downstairs, the house breathed around me. 42 rooms, most of them dark, the scent of old money and older grief. Portraits of Henry's ancestors, staring down with the mild disapproval of people who never had to live with their mistakes. I went to the kitchen because kitchens are where frightened women go when the night is too large. The Sub-Zero hummed like a sleeping animal. I poured 2 fingers of Lafroig into a heavy crystal tumbler. No ice, never ice. And let the peat smoke burn my throat. Then I called the only man I have ever allowed to see me afraid. Rajiv Malhotra answered on the first ring, voice thick with sleep and 35 years of answering phones at terrible hours. "Ellie, I need you at the house. Bring your kit. And Rajiv, come alone." He arrived 23 minutes later, wearing bedroom slippers and the same shoulder holster he'd worn the night he told me Sarah hadn't survived the crash. Some images brand themselves onto the retina forever. I met him at the side door so the motion sensors wouldn't flood the driveway with light. He took one look at my face and didn't waste time on greetings. We went to the kitchen island. I laid the note on a sheet of acid-free paper beneath the magnifying lamp Henry had used to read shipping contracts. Rajiv read it once, read it again. Then he did something I had never seen him do in 30 years. He swore in Punjabi, low and vicious. "Marcel Laurent has been dead for 15 years, Ellie. Apparently, death was negotiable." He photographed the note from every angle, slipped it into an evidence envelope, sealed it with tape that said, "Crime scene. Do not break. I'll pull the venue's raw footage," he said. "Every camera, every second. And I'll run the paper for prints, DNA, anything. Do it quietly. If David finds out there was cyanide intended for his son at his wedding, he'll tear the city apart with his bare hands. Rajiv's eyes softened. How's the boy? Sleeping. For now. He reached across the marble and covered my cold hand with his warm one. We'll get the bastard, Ellie. I wanted to believe him. God, how I wanted to believe him. At 3:42 a.m., the encrypted file arrived. Rajiv opened it on his laptop. Grainy black and white footage. Time-stamped 2017-11. A man, tall, white-haired, moving with the careful slowness of age, wearing the black jacket of the evening's catering company. Cap pulled low. He pauses at table 5, bends as if adjusting something on the floor, straightens and walks away. Freeze frame. Enhance. On the left breast pocket, a small embroidered logo, a silver platter. Below it, in flowing script, Silver Platter Events. Registered owner, according to the state business portal, Rajiv pulled up 30 seconds later. Camille Marie Laurent. I felt the whiskey threaten to come back up. Camille Laurent, 19 years old, the last time I saw her alive. Declared brain dead 26 years ago. I sank onto a kitchen stool. The same stool where Sarah used to sit, eating cereal straight from the box at 2 a.m. when she was pregnant and couldn't sleep. She's alive, I whispered. Rajiv's voice was gentle. Looks that way. I closed my eyes and saw the girl on the kitchen floor again. Blue lips, freckles, summer sky eyes, already looking into whatever comes after. All these years, I had carried guilt like a stone in my chest, but I had consoled myself that at least she hadn't suffered long. Now I understood the suffering had only just begun, and it had been aimed, with surgical patience, at my grandson. I opened my eyes. Find them, I said. My voice did not shake. Find where they live, where they work, what they eat for breakfast, and then we are going to have a conversation. Rajiv nodded once, already running the plates on every van that serviced the venue tonight. I stood, walked to the window, and looked out at the rose garden, silvered by moonlight. Henry had planted those roses the year Timmy was born. Sarah had helped him, 8 months pregnant, laughing when thorns snagged her maternity dress. I spoke without turning around. Rajiv, when you find them, I don't want police radios and shouting. I want them brought here, to this house, quietly. He was silent long enough for me to hear the ice maker drop new cubes into the bin. Ellie, he said carefully, you know I'm not asking you to break the law. I'm asking you to delay it. 24 hours. Let me look them in the eye first. Another silence. Then, 24 hours. After that, their evidence. I turned. Thank you. He packed up his kit, paused at the door. Lock every door tonight, Eleanor. Every single one. After he left, I did exactly that. Then I went upstairs, eased myself onto the floor beside Timmy's bed, and sat watch until the sky outside turned the color of weak tea. At 6:03 a.m., my phone buzzed with a single text from Rajiv. Found them. Old Winery, Napa Valley. Sending address now. They cater a private brunch tomorrow. 20 guests. You're not on the list. I looked at the sleeping child beside me, at the small hand curled around the ear of his stuffed giraffe, and felt something ancient and cold settle in my bones. I typed back one line. Put me on it. Napa Valley, 15th of June, 2025, 9:12 a.m. The winery sat at the end of a long, unpaved road that hadn't been graded since the Clinton administration. Dust rose behind Rajiv's unmarked black Suburban, like a ghost trying to catch up. The morning was already hot. Heat shimmered above the rows of withered vines that had once produced award-winning Cabernet. Now the leaves were brown, curled like burnt paper, and the trellises sagged under decades of neglect. Silver Platter Events operated from what had once been the tasting room, a low stone building with cracked stucco and a faded sign that still read Laurent Family Vineyards, EST, 1958. The irony tasted like rust in my mouth. Rajiv killed the engine 50 yards out. We sat in silence, windows down, cicadas screaming in the dry grass. You sure you want to do this alone? He asked for the third time. I'm not alone, I said. I have 26 years of unpaid debt riding shotgun.